Many children's shoes said that they didn't understand Game of Thrones fan fiction, there were too many characters, and the storyline was complicated, which really made people's brains hurt. In this chapter, let's learn about the Game of Thrones incident. I hope it will be helpful to friends who are interested. The story takes place in a fantasy world. This is not a year divided into 4 seasons, but a season that lasts for several years. How many years is the season? Not fixed, depends on mood. And it seems that there may be no spring and autumn but only winter and summer. The world is divided into 4 continents, but we only need to remember 2 in the early stage. One is the mainline continent, the Westeros continent that is in full swing. Equivalent to the level of civilization in the Middle Ages, the social form is a feudal society. The other is Essos, a giant continent several times larger than Westeros. The degree of civilization is relatively backward, and the social form in most areas is slave society. The 2 continents are separated by the Narrow Sea. The Narrow Sea is actually a strait, not so wide. Game of Thrones takes place mainly in Westeros, and the timeline is 17 years after the Usurpers' War. Next, let's introduce the distribution of the main forces in Westeros from north to south, as well as the relationship between important families and personalities. The continent was divided into 2 by a giant fortification made of ice and snow, the Great Wall of Despair. To the north of the Great Wall is the territory of savages and other ghosts. The savages believe in the old gods, and the seasons are cold and winter there. South of the Great Wall is divided into 7 kingdoms. And stationed at the Great Wall is the Night's Watch Legion that guards the civilized society. It used to be a regular army full of Rongguan. It is a great honor to be a night watchman. They cannot marry and have children, and they have no right of inheritance. However, with the hibernation of the White Walkers, their importance has shrunk seriously, and the current Night Watch is basically composed of criminals. You can't play with women, it's strange that you don't have the right to inherit. Because it is located in the north and is a country, the Night's Watch Legion has been ruled by the Stark family for a long time. The main characters are Ned's younger brother, the Chief Ranger of the Night's Watch, Bunyan Stark, and Jono, the illegitimate son of Ned who has just joined. Leaving the Great Wall of Despair. Ushered in the First Kingdom, the Northern Kingdom. The northern border is located south of the Great Wall and north of the Neck. The capital is Winterfell. House Stark has ruled here for millennia. They believe in the old gods and use the dire wolf as their family emblem. There will be some clansmen with wolf spirit in the family. The protagonist of the book, Lyn, is located at the southernmost tip of the northern border. There is a small fishing village fortress on the east coast. To the north is the largest inland port in the mainland, Bygong City. The main characters of the North Kingdom, Duke Ned Stark, his wife Catelyn Tully and their children. The eldest son Robb, the second son Bran, and the youngest son Rickon. The eldest daughter, Sansa Stark, and the youngest daughter, Arya Stark. In addition, there is the so-called illegitimate son Jono, and the adopted son of the hostage, Theon, the son of the Lord of the Iron Islands. Beneath the northern border is the Neck, which is an important place for the throat. Beyond the Neck, it is the south in the true sense. There are 6 kingdoms and 8 administrative regions crowded here, and most people here believe in the 7 gods. Next to the Neck is the Kingdom of Hegion. This place is located in the fertile Trident River Basin, and the capital is River City. Currently in charge of the Tully family, the clan Mold Silver Trout. The Riverlands is the most important location in Westeros. Hegiondi is bordered by the northern border in the north, Kian in the west, Valley Kingdom and King's Landing in the east, and River Bay in the south. It is a transportation fortress on the mainland and a place where various forces compete. The main character here. Catelyn married to Ned Stark, Lord of the North. Married to Lisa of Jonaran, the former Prime Minister of the Valley, Lord of the Valley. And Littlefinger, the adopted son of the Tully family, who has stirred up the storm, and the current Minister of Finance who reigns. Of course, there is also the Duke of Riverrun, Aemon Tully, and the Tully family, the former vassal of the twins, Lord Valder Frey. To the west of the Riverland is the Kingdom of Casterly Rock, the capital of Casterly Rock City, the ruler of the Lannister family, and the family emblem of the Golden Lion. This area is rich in gold mines and is the richest area. The current Duke is Tywin Lannister. His children are the famous Queen Cersei, Jaime the Kingslayer and the cynical Little Devil. Of course, strictly speaking, there are also the children born by Sihua and James carrying King Robert on their backs, Joffrey and Tommen. These two children briefly became the next two kings of the Seven Kingdoms respectively. To the northeast of Hegion is the Valley Kingdom, also known as the Valley. This place is named after the Eagle Moon Mountains and the valley surrounded by the mountains. Ruled by the Irene family for generations, the capital is Eagle's Nest City, and the family emblem is Crescent Falcon. Since the death of former Prime Minister, John Lynn, Elling Valley has always been ruled by her wife, Lisa, and her nursing son, Good Robin. Ned, Lord of the North, and Robert, the former king of this book, are both adopted sons of Jon Arryn. To the southeast of Hegiondi is the political center of the Seven Kingdoms, King's Landing. Since 300 years ago, Aegon Targaryen the Conqueror conquered the whole world and established the Red Keep. Dragons have always ruled Westeros. It wasn't until after the Usurpers' War, when Robert sat on the Iron Throne, that the dragons were ousted from the throne. Today, the only known descendants of the dragon race, Viserys and Daenerys, have fled to the continent of Essos, powered to make a comeback. To the south of King's Landing is the Kingdom of Storms. It got its name because it has been invaded by the wind of the Narrow Sea all the year round. The ruler is the Baratheon family, the capital city of Storm's End, and the family emblem of the crowned stag. Because Robert became king of the Seven Kingdoms, so the current Storm's End is run by Robert's third brother Renly. And Robert's second brother, Stannis, was stationed at Dragonstone, a remote island. Of course, Robert also had an illegitimate son, Big Bull. To the west of the Kingdom of Storms is the Reach, the Kingdom of the Reach. Important figures are the Knights of the 100 Flowers, who is engaged with Robert's third brother Renly, and is guarded by the Tyrell family in High Court. The southernmost part of the continent is the Kingdom of Dorne. Sunspear is the home of the Martell family and the ruling center of Dorne. Except, of course, the Seven Kingdoms. Westeros, there is also an Iron Archipelago in the northwest. They believe in the drowned god and used to be the strongest fighting force at sea. The Iron Islands used to be an independent and sovereign country, and now it is the territory of the Greyjoy family in Pike City. The illegitimate children of the Iron Islands are all named Pike. Because he always engages in rebellion, he is always suppressed. Theon, the only remaining son of King Balon Greyjoy of the Iron Islands, was sent to Winterfell as a hostage and became the adopted son of Ned Stark. The above is the geography of Game of Thrones and the general family relationship. Maybe you can only understand half of it, so keep reading. The beginning of the Game of Thrones story begins with an important historical event. The Battle of the Usurper. The last king of the Dragon Clan Targaryen, the Mad King, lost his heart because of his tyrannical rule. During the reign of the Mad King, a tournament was held in Harrenhal. Mad King's eldest son Rhaegar came out on top, but he gave Ned's sister Lyanna the Queen's Wreath, a symbol of love and beauty. You know, Rhaegar has a son, a daughter, and a daughter-in-law, and Lyanna also has a marriage contract with Robert. Then Lyanna disappeared. Rumor has it that he was kidnapped by Prince Rhaegar. So Ned's eldest brother, Brandon, went to King's Landing to ask for someone from the Mad King. In the end, no one wanted to come. However, along with his father, Rickard, Duke of Winterfell, they were both executed by the Mad King. Since then, Ned is united because of family feud, and Robert because of his hatred of taking his wife. And Jon Arryn, their adoptive father, couldn't stand idly by. But just relying on the three major families is not enough. So at Jon Arryn's suggestion, he began to win over the Tully family. Because before, Brandon was engaged to Caitlin. After Brandon's death, Jonathan asked Ned to marry Caitlin and himself to Lisa. The Seven Kingdoms were reversed by 4 at once, and the War of the Usurpers broke out in full swing. The war was raging for a while. Until the Battle of the Trident. www.mtlnovel.com. Robert smashed Rhaegar to death with a hammer. The dragon family completely collapsed. The situation is clear. The Lannister family, who had always been neutral, finally made a move, and Tywin led an army to King's Landing. The Mad King couldn't figure out whether the former Prime Minister Tywin was escorting or killing the king. Among the ministers, the intelligence chief Varys opposed the entry of the Tywin army into the city. But the Mad King believed it and opened the city gates by the words of the great scholar Pale. The Mad King guessed wrong. Tywin was on the side of the rebels. The Mad King, who knew that the situation was over, ordered James to kill his father Tywin. But Jaime directly broke his oath of the King's Guard and killed the Mad King. So James took on the title of Kingslayer. When Ned led his army into the halls of the Iron Throne, he saw that Jaime had killed the Mad King and was sitting on the Iron Throne. The upright Ned didn't understand the principle of first come, first served, but he didn't sit on the throne. Instead, they made Robert king with Jonathan. Jon became Prime Minister. Why have Robert? Because Robert's grandmother was from House Targaryen. Therefore, in the eyes of the world, Robert also has the blood of the dragon family, and it is justifiable for him to inherit the throne. After all the descendants of the Mad King were brutally murdered by Tywin's subordinates. The only remaining Viserys and the newly born Daenerys also fled to the Essos continent on the other side of the Narrow Sea. In this way, under the new dynasty, it was peaceful for 17 years. But with the approach of winter, Prime Minister Jonathan died suddenly, and Daenerys's real dragon physique awakened. And with the arrival of Lyn, a traveler, this epic story officially begins. Lyn traveled to the world of Game of Thrones and became a small lord of a village port outside Bygong. After Ned, the Guardian of the North, was imprisoned, the war between the Starks and Lannisters of the North began. Harrenhal, the military war conference hall, Tywin Lannister called the bartender girl and asked, "Are you from the North?" "Yes, deserted tomb." Arya Stark lied without blushing. It was the territory of the nobles in the North, and she was very familiar with it. Tywin nodded. "What do Northerners think of Robb Stark?" She knew this question. Arya said, "They said that Robb is the undead young wolf master who charged into battle on a dire wolf, and can change the wolf body at will." "Do you believe this statement?" Arya remembered her father, the former Guardian of the North, Ned Stark. She looked at Tywin and said calmly, "Everyone is mortal." Gan. A raven landed on the limestone window lattice, opened its beak, and let out a shrill cry. Lyn took the crete at the feet of the transition crow, spread it out and looked at it. He was here again to urge his little lord to reinforce Robb's expedition to the south, this time with a threatening tone. Obviously, Robb's army needs more soldiers to serve. As a traveler, Lyn knew that Robb wouldn't be able to get any advantage from this southern expedition, and even his old nest, Donglin City, would be thrown away, but he was about to be regarded as the king of the North by the vassals of the North. If he refused the order, is to defy the will of the North, and there is no way to mix in the North. But if you want to send out the dozen or so subordinates under your own, how can you get a foothold in the territory? When the time comes, a group of bandits will come and kill you. Without the subordinates, your life will be difficult to protect. I'd rather give my entire worth, 30 gold dragons, 110 silver deers, 886 bronze stars, and 3 copper coins, than throwing my men who can protect my own safety to Robb and squandering them." Lyn thought to herself with a sullen face. "Ding, congratulations, Master, the blasting system is loading, please wait." A crisp voice made Lyn shudder. Lyn was stunned for a moment, and was almost moved to tears of grievance. "System Master, you can count. In this Game of Thrones world, I was in fear every day, I couldn't sleep at night, I was urged by Rob's guy all day, and my hair was white. About 2 minutes later, the voice sounded again, the loading is successful, please ask the master to check the panel, explore independently, and work hard to complete the task. Ding! Congratulations to the host for being selected by the bombing system as an explosive system. Kryptonite is king. Current system level 1 for the first activation, invest 30 golden dragon, 110 silver deer, 886 bronze star and 3 copper plates to achieve the first recharge reward. Current upgrade experience, 30.1/100.300. Note 1, for every 2 experience points consumed, you can blast 2 level 1 infantry, 2 level 1 spearmen, or 1 level 1 cavalry and 1 level 1 archer. Note 2, for every 3 EXP points consumed, 3 pieces of cotton armor, 2 pieces of mail armor, and 1 piece of steel armor can be exploded. Note 3, because you have achieved the first charge of 1 golden dragon reward, you will get a small gift package for the first charge once, and the reward points will be drawn into a card. Note 4, because you have reached the 10 golden dragon reward for the first charge, you will get a first charge gift package, and a random one will be awarded to a ranger, traveler, butler, assassin, and gladiator swordsman. This explosive system? After Lin En listened carefully to the system notification sound, he was sluggish for a while, and repeatedly confirmed that it was not a hallucination, and his face slowly turned red. A pig-like howl resounded through the Lord Castle in the fishing village port. All my belongings! Lin En felt very distressed that he invested his entire family in the system in a single thought. What made him even more distressed was that the first top-up gift package only needed 10 gold dragons, but he had recharged 20 gold dragons, 110 silver deers, 886 bronze stars, and 3 copper coins. System, you are so dark, I'm just talking about it casually. In Game of Thrones, a silver coin can buy a Virgo, and a gold dragon is equivalent to tens of thousands of soft sister coins. Lin En gasped in pain, his eyes fixed on the point drawing cards and special occupation drawing cards in his mind. Brother put all his money into it. Whether you can become the most beautiful cub among the northern lords and reach the pinnacle of life is up to you. Thinking of drawing cards, Lin was considering whether to take a shower and change his clothes, and then prayed to the old that he believed in the northern kingdom, but he heard a whimpering horn from outside the castle. 1 sound is vigilance, 2 sounds are small enemy invasions, 3, big. My day, it must be the pirates coming. Lin's territory is roughly equivalent to a township unit. The Lord City is called the fishing village Port City, which is located on the southernmost coast of the northern border. Most of the people in the territory live in the fortresses and make a living by fishing. The biggest obstacle to survival comes from the pirates on the Three Sisters Islands in the Bight Bay between the north and the bottom of the valley. These guys choose to go to the shore to harass small fortresses every once in a while. For this reason, when Lin first came to the fishing village port territory of Quenya World, he instructed his subordinates to use the horn as an order to convey information. Lin looked nervous. It was said that there were hundreds of those pirates. Usually, even the great lords in the north and the valley couldn't do anything about them. Come on, close the city gate. Lin hurriedly ordered. The lord has an order, close the city gate and prepare for battle. Ready to fight. As soon as Lin's voice fell, the people in the castle started to act. Although most of them were a little flustered, they gathered quickly. The dozen or so bodyguards who are most capable of fighting are neatly dressed, most of them are leather armor or chain armor, and their weapons are also various. At this moment, the wooden gate was firmly closed. In fact, the fishing village Port Castle is said to be a city, but it is actually a large village surrounded by wooden fences. Fortunately, the top of the wooden fence is sharpened, and it is more than 3 meters high. It is really difficult for ordinary thieves to break through. There are several sentry towers that can be shot by 5 or 6 archers. This is considered to have basic defense capabilities. Residents in the territory make a living by fishing on the seashore. www.mtlnovel.com. Each and everyone has dark skin and is strong and strong. At this moment, they were all agitated by Lin's subordinates, nervously holding harpoons against the closed door. Lin came to the sentry tower of the wooden city wall. Seeing that on the pier in the distance, a group of pirates in rough clothes with various swords, axes, and spears disembarked from the pirate ship. Look at the dusty appearances of those holding weapons. Lin bit her tongue and almost thought she had read it wrong. Such a messy formation is the jagged pirates stationed on the Three Sisters? That's it. Lin tilted his head to look at the old man Hill who was following him. This is the second educated and learned old bachelor in the fishing village port fortress. These people are really pirates. Lin couldn't believe it. The old scholar Hill was frightened by the number of enemies for a while, looked at Lin En with a look of shock and said respectfully, "Sir, it is indeed the flag of the Three Sisters Island, they are all on the Three Sisters Island in Biting Bay. The most vicious pirate ever." Lin was stunned. Only then did I see that a tall and strong man among the pirates held a banner high in his hand. The pattern of a skeleton bird was drawn on the flag with fishing net lines, but because it was corroded by sea water all the year round, the flag was somewhat rotten, and the tattered wind fluttered in the center of the crowd on the beach outside the castle. But no matter how Lin looked at these pirates, he didn't think they were much of a threat. Lin En, who has a high degree of compulsory education, immediately remembered an idiom. The rabble. He gradually calmed down, completely letting go of the panic in his heart. Typos, sick sentences, poisonous comments, please leave a chapter to remind you. In the throne room, King Robert's favorite tapestries were all torn down and piled in a disorderly manner in the corner, and now the walls are empty. Sansa Stark was granted the right to come and go freely in the castle by the Queen Mother Cersei as a reward for her good behavior. But even so, no matter where she went, there were still people by her side. Sansa doesn't feel respected at all. The so-called free to come and go in the castle means that she can move freely in the Red Castle, as long as she promises not to go outside the city walls. Gan. Outside the fishing village Port Castle at the southern end of the northern border, a group of pirates surrounded Jiang. They stood outside the shooting range of the attackers on the city wall and stretched their necks to observe the reaction of the guards on the city wall. After a few pirates who tried to approach the city gate were decisively shot and killed by Lin's men, the pirates stopped rushing forward. They began to patiently gather on the beach outside the city, as if waiting for something. Lin squinted for a while, only to realize that a group of pirates started to carry some tall wooden shelves from the sea boat. In terms of shape, it looks like something similar to a small siege catapult. Lin greeted Hood, the guard leader who was vigilant at the sentry tower not far away. The guy was wearing lint armor and had a shaggy face. He came to Lin and behaved very respectfully. "Sir, are you calling me?" asked Hood, the leader of the guards. Lin En took a careful look at this man, and found that this man did not show any timidity in the face of the crowd of pirates outside the city, and there was even a bit of excitement in his fierce face. Not afraid of the battle, not to mention the combat ability, the quality of the heart is still good. Lin nodded secretly. "Hood, let someone prepare to clear the road of the city gate, and let the residents of the territory not surround the gate, and let them go to the city wall to help defend," Lin ordered. Hearing this, Hood showed hesitation. "Sir, what if you pull everyone up to the city wall and wait for those pirates to attack? Hold on to the city wall, our reinforcements will arrive soon," Lin said lightly. Hood's lips were thick and heavy, he was stunned for a while, but he didn't say anything after all. Hesitantly nodded and agreed, "Okay, my lord." Lin watched Hood follow his instructions to prepare for the defense. He was thinking about the blaster system while walking towards his mansion. "I came to the front yard of the Lord's mansion and found the open space where the guards were trained on weekdays. Most of the people in the mansion were sent by Lin to guard the gate. At this time, the training ground was empty. Ding! Welcome to the blasting system. Lin En quickly entered the system, opened the gift box on the interface, looked at Huang Cancan's point drawing card, and clicked it without hesitation. The rays of light flashed. Ding! Congratulations to the host for drawing and redeeming 99 points. This point can be exchanged for any point item, but the point experience will not be increased. Lin sighed, 99 o'clock was fine, neither the European Emperor nor the chief. She raised her eyes to confirm the eye panel. Current upgrade experience, 30.1/100 current points, 400. Estimate the explosive points of the system. A cavalry and archer blaster requires 2 points. An infantryman and a spearman need 1 point. If you have 400 points. Lin took a breath and decided to exchange for 100 for a level 1 archer and 200 for a level 1 infantry. At this time, I didn't think much about it, I just spent all 400 points. It wasn't that Lin wasn't interested in the cavalry, but considering that the cavalry needed a complete full set of armor to exert their true strength, he could only grit his teeth and give up. The purchase was successful. There was a wave in the space 2 meters away from Lin, and humanoid creatures emitting white light gradually emerged. Soldiers with different skin colors, black or white, appeared from the beam of light. Based on Lin's 16-year-old age and a height of 1.73 meters. All of these soldiers were over 1.75 meters tall, with medium to upper stature. Most of them had white skin, a multicolored nose, and blue eyes. In addition to the long knives, long axes, or the bows and arrows of the archers and the quiver filled with arrows. She was wearing only a pair of thin shorts. The muscles on the body are not obvious, but they are very strong. Standard normal West-Era soldier template. Master, the explosive corps will report to you. When all the soldiers filled the entire training ground in an instant, what kind of preparation was there in Lin's heart, but he was still shocked by this scene. Lin saw the blasters quickly enter the state, and fell to one knee. While smacking his tongue, his heart was filled with infinite emotion and pride. These are the exploding troops that are exchanged for Krypton gold after all the family's assets are exchanged. Brother finally took a solid step towards the most beautiful cub among the northern lords. Lin pointed to the short, sturdy infantry with dark skin in front of him and asked, "What's your name?" "Redarty. My master." Lin nodded, then pointed at a tall, thin, and fair-skinned archer who was about 1.9 meters tall and asked, "How about you?" "Call me Harry Kane, master." "Very good. You two will be the leaders of the infantry regiment and the archer regiment in the future." "As per your order, master." Lin En nodded with satisfaction. Looking at the team of 300 people in total, he suddenly felt that these people had no clothes and armor, and it seemed that it would be a disadvantage to go out to fight so shirtless. Zero armor, in hand-to-hand combat, it is estimated that the casualty rate will be ridiculously high. Lin felt a little regretful and exchanged all the points for blasters in one go. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully redeeming the explosives and activating the World Tour of Thrones mission system. The sound of the system suddenly sounded again, and Lin was startled and listened with bated breath. Rookie Task 1, reach an alliance agreement with other lords, and exchange reward points for 1 card. Newbie Task 2, conquer the territory of other lords, get 1 reward points. Exchange card. Newbie Mission 3, successfully capture the spy in the city, 1 reward points. Exchange card. After pondering for a moment, it seems that currently only the third task is possible to complete these 3 novice tasks. The task of catching spies? Could it be that there are spies in our city? No wonder those pirates came to attack their territory unscrupulously. Thinking www.mtlnovel.com, Lin issued the first order. Rodart, gather a team, go to the mansion, put on servants' clothes, scatter people to all corners of the city, and secretly arrest and imprison all those suspicious guys. Lin pondered for a moment. The battle for the city defense was expected to start soon. He had to find the spy as quickly as possible, otherwise his blasters would really have to go into battle without saying anything, and he would have to guard against the risk of someone in the rear turning mutiny. Yes. The infantry leader Rodart did not hesitate and obeyed Lin's orders absolutely. With an order, a dozen people were led by Rodart, found some coarse clothes in the mansion and put them on, and went out aggressively. At this moment, a long horn sounded at the city gate. This is another warning sign. Could it be that the other party has come to reinforce the army? Lin was debating whether or not to let the 100 archers go to the tower to help first, so just shorts should be shorts. Hiding behind the wooden fence to shoot arrows at the opponent is better than staring at him here. While hesitating, an old man in a grey and white robe walked into the practice ground with small steps. It was old Maester Hill. At this moment, he was standing at the door of the training ground, looking at the squadrons standing in rows in surprise. His jaw almost dropped in surprise. Lin greeted him. "Old Hill, is there something wrong?" "Sir, what are these?" The old bachelor pointed at the soldiers in the training ground in surprise and asked in confusion. Lin smiled, "Without explanation, there is no way to explain this kind of thing. The more you say, the more flaws you will have. It's better to keep a sense of mystery." "Reinforcement," he said lightly, and then asked, "Looking for me, what's the matter?" "How deep is the dungeon under the Red Fort?" The former Northern Guardian, the former Prime Minister Ned Stark, dare not think about it. He remembered the tales of Magur the Cruel, of whom he had murdered all the craftsmen who had built his castle, so that they could never reveal their secrets. He cursed each of them, Littlefinger, Jane Urslant and his Golden Guard, the Queen, the Kingslayer, Purser, Varys, and Sir Baristan, even Robert's own brother, Duke Renly, because he ran away when he needed him most. In the end, however, he blamed himself. "Idiot!" he shouted into the darkness, "You stupid!" The face of the Queen Mother Cersei Lannister emerged from the darkness, her hair like sunshine and a mocking smile. "In the Game of Thrones, if you are not the winner, there is only one way to die," she whispered. Ned lost the game, and his minions paid the price for his stupidity in blood and life. Thinking of his two daughters, he just wanted to cry aloud, but the tears just couldn't fall. Even in this field, he is still a Stark of Winterfell, his grief and rage frozen in him. "Gan." Maester Hill looked back and looked at Lin and replied in a low voice, "Sir, it's the people from White Harbour who appeared outside the castle." Lin was stunned for a moment. "Wyman Mandalay's men?" The old bachelor nodded, "Yes, Sir Wyman Mandalay was promoted to Earl not long ago and stayed at White Harbour." Dozens of horses from White Harbour were watching from the hillside on the north side. Baigong is the upper-level city of the fishing village port. As a vassal of the Stark family, he should take most of the army of Baigong to join Robb at Carlin Bay and go south. "What are they doing here?" "Help me defeat the pirates." Lin couldn't make up his mind for a while. "I think they may have come to collect military service and tax service." The old bachelor Hill said embarrassedly. "This is a door-to-door or bill collection, shameless." Lin scolded her mother. "There is no tax service, not even half of it, and he has just gone bankrupt. Aren't they going to help? If this place is captured by pirates, where will they collect military service and tax service?" Lin asked in confusion. Old Hill lowered his eyebrows and glanced at Lin, and said helplessly, "Sir, they will retake the fishing village port castle from the pirates and dispatch other lords to come over." My day! So realistic! Lin suddenly felt uncomfortable. However, Baikeng City, located at the mouth of the Barren River, is the largest settlement north of the Neck and one of the 5 major cities in West Eros. It is also the main trading port in the north, and its strength should not be underestimated. For the time being, Lin has no way to take these OB players. After all, the master of Baigong is the lord of the Earl, one of the vassals in the north, and he is a small country lord. In the eyes of others, he is nothing. Abandoning the idea of being incompetent and furious, Lin rolled his eyes and asked Maester Hill, "Is there any news about the relationship between the Northern Army and Lannister recently?" He wanted to thoroughly understand the current situation. Bai Gang was in a hurry to send someone directly to collect military service and tax service. Could it be that the battle on the front line is already not optimistic? After Ned Stark, the former Guardian of the North, was imprisoned for so-called treason, Robb immediately summoned his vassals and sent troops south to rescue his father. The northern area is vast and sparsely populated, and Robb's army was very expensive, so he only recruited 18,000 people to go south. However, he has not waited for him to actually enter the Riverland. Facing the 20,000 elite soldiers led by Tywin Lannister and the 15,000 strong army of Jaime Lannister, the Riverland was under the command of Edmund, the son of the Duke of Riverrun, and only the river was left. There are 3 castles in the city of Twins and the city of Haijiang. The rest almost all fell into Tywin's hands. Old Maester Hill was obviously stunned for a moment, not understanding why Lord was concerned about the war between Stark in the north and the Lannister family. This is not something that the little lord needs to worry about, especially when the big enemy is at the moment. Old Hill looked at his lord carefully, at a young and frivolous age, with a fair and handsome face. A pair of eyes full of sharpness and wisdom, but the body is a little thinner. Old Scholar Hill suddenly felt that he had ignored the hidden ambitions of the young lord in front of him. He looked at Lyn and said slowly, "Sir, the latest news is that Robb, the young wolf master, married the Frey family in the Twin Rivers a few days ago." Lyn didn't notice the strange look in Hill's eyes. Hearing that, he nodded. The Frey family is a vassal of the Riverland Tully family, but they are not very obedient. Jiabao Twin City is located on the Green Fork River between the rivers. The family made a fortune and nobility for collecting tolls on the bridge. The family emblem of the Frey family is the Blue Tower Bridge on the silver and white background. Duke Tully is Robb's grandfather, and Aemond is his uncle. After Riverrun was besieged by James, he rescued Riverrun in order to divide his troops to attack James. Under the arrangement of his mother, Catherine Tully, Robb established an alliance with the Frey family through a political marriage. However, this also laid the foreshadowing that the young Wolf Lord and his mother Catherine would die in the Twin City in the future. These are all later stories. Thinking of this, Lin suddenly couldn't understand the purpose of those who came from Baigong outside the city. It stands to reason that Robb's northern vassal army is currently married to the Frey family, and the limelight is winning. There should be no need to come to your own territory, but to ask for military service and tax service that have nothing to do with the overall situation. He waved the old Scholar Hill away, and personally led people to check on the city wall. Sure enough, on the hillside on the north side outside the city, there were several teams of cavalry waving the flag of the Mandalay family. Lin turned his attention to the frontal battlefield. The pirates were constantly carrying the parts of the trebuchet from the ship, and they were already assembling the first one. Lin's fishing village harbor didn't even have a decent ballista, but the other party directly dispatched a catapult. Ma Dan, it looks like he has no plans to live for himself. Estimated the time it would take for the other party to assemble all 3 trebuchets. Lin watched the residents of his territory keep moving big wood and stones to the city wall, and encouraged the guards and fishermen to say a few words, and then return to the mansion. Now he desperately wants to catch the spy, and use the scorecard of the novice mission to exchange a batch of equipment materials. Lin changed his mind and didn't want to stay in the city. Let the opponent use the trebuchet to shoot a few rounds of salvos, and his city wall may collapse, but Lin has no money to repair it. The infantry leader Rodart moved quickly, allowing Lin to see the execution of the explosives. A batch of guys who were considered suspicious were sent to a small prison next to the Lord's mansion. Lin rushed to the prison with people and asked them to release all the suspected spies who were detained inside. Dozens of people soon filled the arena outside the prison. Seeing Lin appear, these people knelt down in a panic. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com asked the Lord to give a reason for arrest. There is a spy between you. When the enemy is in front of you, you know how I will deal with you. Lin dropped a bombshell without saying a word. A few timid fishermen and women cried in fright on the spot when they heard the words, and they all cried out for injustice. Fornicating with the enemy is to be beheaded, and no one dares to admit this crime. Lord, Lord, we are not spies. I have been a good person in the fishing village port for generations. My lord, you are wronged. Lord, Lord, I swear allegiance to the Lord, and I will never be a spy. Naturally, Lin didn't believe these nonsense. The residents who had a sense of belonging to the fishing village port castle were mobilized by their servants to help at the gate of the city. Now these are the guys who are wandering around in the city, and they are locked in by all the secrets of Rodart. Okay, be quiet. Lin stretched out his hand to interrupt the chaos. Now you have a chance to prove your loyalty and find the guy you see for this lord. Now, not all the local residents, let them stand in the open space on the left. Lin thought that since the mission was to find out spies, not traitors, presumably this person was not a local. This is also considered an old game player, and must have reading ability when dealing with rigid game tasks. Soon, the scene began to become chaotic again. The fishing village port is not very big, the total number of residents is less than 300, and there are very few outsiders. These local residents usually go out to sea for fishing, and most of them know each other. More than 30 people were arrested, but after a while, only 5 or 6 people were left out. When Lin En saw this, he was overjoyed and knew that there was a drama. When Lin's blaster system is activated, the threed raven in the Shenmue forest seemed to see a dazzling comet streaking across the sky, as if a wound appeared on the purploed sky, and in the endless dark night symbolizing the continent of West Eros, weeping blood appeared. Lin sent people to a few suspicious outsiders, covered their mouths with black cloth, and walked across the street to the city wall. His guard leader, Hood, saw the strange behavior of his lord, and rushed over with a squire. There are pirates in the castle, it should be among these people. I think you may have a way to find out which one it is. Lin made a brief statement to his guard leader in a low voice, pointing to a few people who were not far away. Gag Guy, the leader of the guards, Hood, was stunned for a moment, and then he agreed. Of course, my lord. A wicked grin suddenly appeared on the corner of Hood's mouth, and said, My lord, this subordinate can find a pirate spy, but I don't know if your lord is going to die or live. Live, find him, and I will personally judge his crimes. Lin said decisively. The system task is to arrest and kill someone, so how can I get a scorecard by myself? My subordinate understands. Hood agreed, and let some foreigners be escorted to the front of the city wall sentry tower, and let some fishermen who were carrying rolling stones fetch ropes. With a fierce look, Hood took off the black cloths that were stuffed in the mouths of several people. Then he kicked each of them the buttocks and knocked them to the ground. He took out the rope, approached the first man who fell to the ground, rudely put his hands together and tied them with ropes. The dark-skinned man opened his eyes slightly and looked at Hood with ignorant eyes, as if he wanted to say something. The latter gave him a fierce stare, and was so frightened that he didn't dare to spit out a word. While bound, Hood said with regret, the Earl of White Harbor has sent someone to support, and the pirate leader of Biting Bay is going to talk to my family, but we have to hand over their spies first. But we don't know which one of the pirates in this city is his pirate brother, so we will work hard for you foreigners. I will hang you at the gate of the city for a while. If the pirates in Bitman Bay sincerely talk to each other, just let them send someone to identify them. If there is any fraud, you will be on the sentry tower, waiting for the flag to be sacrificed to the people in the castle. Hood's face was full of stubble, and several black scars were cracked in the wind and the sun, which made people palpitate. A few guys who were lying on the city wall waiting to be tied up, heard the words subconsciously and secretly looked out of the city. Sure enough, I saw the pirates standing in the distance. It seems that there is no plan to attack the city for the time being. On the other side of the high hillside, well-dressed knights, holding the White Harbor flag, stood abruptly. The five immediately believed Hood's words again. Two people who were worried that they would be hanged on the city wall to suffer, or become a living target of pirates, looked sad. He was just afraid of Hood's fierce appearance, so he bit his mouth and dared not speak. The other three buried their heads on the ground, unable to see their expressions clearly, and those who remained motionless seemed to accept their fate. When Hood was about to bind the last man with relatively fair skin and a middle-aged, greasy, fat face, the man struggled to break free, fending off Hood's hand that reached out to hold the rope. The greasy fat man sneered and roared, "Let go of me, I'm the uncle of King Sidi of Bitman Bay, let me go out, otherwise, you will never even think about peace talks." Seeing this scene, Lin raised his eyelids. He really didn't expect that the guy who he thought was the least like a pirate was actually a relative of a pirate. It really is unbelievable. Lin En turned around and left happily with his hands behind his back, while saying, "Break his legs and put him in jail. By the way, Hood, let the residents below stop their work. When the reinforcements arrive, the fishing village port will take the initiative to attack. You bring your attendants to prepare." Looking at the young lord walking away lightly, Hood's face was not very good looking. He thought that the reinforcements that Lord Lin mentioned were cavalry from Baigong, who came to the fishing village port after leaving the guards of Baigong. He wanted to persuade Lin En that the people of Baigong were not trustworthy. It's just that the words reached his lips, but he didn't know how to open them. Until Lin's figure disappeared at the far end of the city wall, Hood sighed and couldn't say this. After all, Baigong was nominally the upper-level city of fishing village port. He didn't know if he would persuade him so rashly. The Lord's dissatisfaction. Of course, Lin's reinforcements were not from White Harbor. He was in a good mood at the moment, because when he announced the arrest of that greasy middle-aged fat man, and successfully completed the task, the system readily rewarded him with a point exchange card. Back at the Lord's mansion, Lin couldn't wait to turn on the system and operate it. Ding! Welcome the host to the blasting system. Ding! Congratulations to the host for drawing 161 points, breaking through the 160 point exchange cap of the level 1 system. Reach the OUHOW achievement. Ding! Host OUHOW achieved the achievement, rewarded with a Valyrian steel short blade. Lin En was overjoyed. He actually broke the upper limit by drawing cards and achieved the OUHOW achievement. This can be done. But why is it only OUHOW and not OUHWANG? Lin En didn't have time to think about it. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com was stunned by the system's achievement reward. My dear, Valyrian steel short blade. This is good stuff. Valyrian steel is a powerful metal forged during the Valyrian freehold period. If it is cast into an iron sword, its blade can remain sharp forever. Its strength is much stronger than that of ordinary iron swords, but its weight is relatively light. In real-world terms, this substance is similar to Damascus steel, but it is a fantastical product, which means that it has some magical elements in it. Therefore, Valyrian steel is one of the substances other than dragon glass that can be used to kill the White Walkers, but this information is not known to the general public. A few of the Valyrian steel swords forged at that time were owned by prominent families in the land of Westeros, and passed down from generation to generation. The light flashed. Carlos suddenly felt his waist sink, and a short blade with a sheath suddenly appeared and hung on his waist. Lin didn't go to watch the Valyrian steel knife for a while, because there were nearly 300 explosives waiting to get dressed at the training ground. Looking at them at this moment, Lin En, who was wearing shorts and showing off his muscles, with a slightly thin body, felt out of breath. In this world of macho men, it is easy to have low self-esteem if you are thin. A top honor, there is such a dwarf little devil in the Lannister family, who suffers from it. 161 points can be exchanged for 161 cotton armor. Lin didn't hesitate, and didn't covet chain armor and plate armor. He pragmatically exchanged all the points for cotton armor, giving the infantry priority equipment. Not long after, witnessing the shock of 161 men dressing at the same time on the training ground. Lin stood on the center stage of the training ground, in high spirits. The Lannister army camp stretches for miles between the river and the King's Road. Night has fallen, dyeing all flags black. The little devil Tyrion had been marching for a day, and his body was sore, and now he was finally relieved from the tip order of his father Tywin Lannister. Tonight he planned to get drunk, but now he turned his attention to the woman in front of him. "That's her?" he asked his bodyguard Bronn. Bronn nodded. He snatched this woman from a knight. The woman stood up gracefully and overlooked Tyrion from a height of more than 5 feet. "Yes, my lord, and she can speak herself, if you please. I am Tyrion of the Lannister family, and others call me the Little Devil. My mother named me she, and others often call me that, me." Bronn laughed, and Tyrion couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. "Then, please enter the account, she." Tyrion lifted the curtain for her, and after entering, lit a candle. He picked up the candle and looked at her carefully. Bronn had a good eye. She had doe-like eyes, was slender, small and stocky, and had a smile that was sometimes shy, sometimes arrogant, sometimes evil. Tyrion was satisfied. "Sir, do you want me to undress?" the woman asked. "Wait a minute, are you a prostitute?" "My lord, if you're happy, think about it this way." She pretended to be solemn. "Little sister, I will be happy when I know the truth." "Really? Then you have to pay double." Tyrion thought they were a perfect match. "I'm a Lannister, some gold, and you'll find I'm a very generous person, but I don't want just what's between your legs, of course I want that. I want you with me. Live, pour wine for me, laugh with me, massage my feet every day after I run around. And, whether I keep you for a day or a year, as long as we're together, you're not allowed to sleep with other men. It's fair." She reached down, grabbed the skirt of her sackcloth shirt, pulled her head smoothly, and threw it aside. Tyrion put down the candle, took her hand, and pulled her gently. She leaned over to kiss him, her mouth smelling of honey and alfalfa, her fingers deftly finding the knots in his clothes. "Gan! Ah ha ha!" The pirates outside the fishing village Port City, and the White Port Knights who were hiding on the hills willing to watch a siege battle, suddenly heard a huge horn sound. This is a standard offensive horn, but they didn't understand for a while why this horn came from the walled fort. Could it be that the little lords inside saw that their siege catapults were about to be installed, ready to leave the city to die? Pirates think so. But Hood, the leader of the guards standing on the city wall, didn't think so. Looking at the exploding regiments that kept coming out of the Lord's mansion, he knew that the reinforcements that the Lord said before really existed, and they did not refer to those knights in White Harbor on the hills. The infantry commander Rodart, the archer commander Hurricane and the exploding corps, lined up inside the city gate. "Hood, guard the city wall and don't let Bygong and the pirates come in. Anyone who tries to get close will be killed on the spot." Lin ignored the surprised leader of the guards and said lightly. The latter nodded with a dull expression. Then, at the signal of Lin, the horn of attack blew in the fishing village Port Castle. There is a beach outside the gate of the fishing village Port Castle, which leads directly to the fishing port wharf. The two sides of the beach at the estuary are tightened hills. The pirate gate that landed from the port was unaware of the danger at this time, and they were all concentrated in the low terrain. In the middle of the beach, Lin was going to let 100 infantrymen and 61 archers in full cotton armor make a frontal attack, and the other 139 were divided into two groups and flanked from both sides. As long as you can quickly occupy the soil slopes on both sides, use the high to fight the low, so that the archer's range can effectively cover the pirate group in the middle, forming a pinch attack. Winning this battle will not be a problem. The trumpet was deep and deep, full of mourning, and joined this chorus. The middle door of the fishing village Port Castle is wide open. The frontal raiders who shouted loudly rushed out. While running, the archers threw their bows in a rain of arrows. They didn't seek precise shooting, but only wanted to suppress the pirates who couldn't react for a while. Lin stood between the old Scholar Hill and the leader of the guards, looking around on the tower on the city wall. The infantry was charging very fast. When approaching the pirates who were preparing to fight back with bows and arrows, they raised their long axes and big swords. The sun on the coast shone with a cruel and sharp light. Long live the explosives! When the arrow rain fell again, Lin heard the cotton-armored soldiers in front shouting loudly. His face suddenly turned black, and he vowed to change another slogan next time. Demacia, for example, is pretty good. Guard Hood held the wooden poles of the wall stack with both hands, and looked at the scene outside, stunned and motionless. When the first wave of the Lord's reinforcements came into contact with the pirates in front, they watched the pirates who were slaughtering them like chopping melons and vegetables, and facing the fierce counterattack of the fishing village port. Hood knew that the victory of this battle must belong to the fishing village port castle. However, when he raised his eyes, he looked at the slopes on both sides of the river valley. Seeing those archer soldiers wearing only shorts, lined up in a long horizontal line on the hill, like training to shoot ducks, they skillfully pulled the bowstring again and again, and began to shoot into the crowd of pirates. When the arrows are thrown, he thought it would be a crush. Seeing the Hood, his heart was beating wildly, and the head of the guard with a fierce look turned his head. www.mtlnovel.com looked at the tight-faced Lord Lin beside him, and lowered his head even lower. A few points. This is a one-sided massacre, and Lin is seeing the power of the explosives. Unmoving, blinking. The warriors on the beach in the river valley were slaughtering frantically. Those sturdy soldiers and pirates each held their weapons to kill or be killed. The echoes were surging, and they came from far away. There were the crackling of broken spears, the sound of swords clashing, and the strange cry of "Long live the explosives!" When Lin understood that opening his eyes was useless, he closed his eyes and listened intently. He heard horses' hooves running, iron boots splashing shallow water, and the dull sound of swords splitting oak shields. The pirates seemed to be forced to jump into the icy waters. But it didn't help. As long as someone was alive, the infantry and arrows of the explosive corps would meet them one by one. The voice gradually became weaker, and finally subsided, and finally there was only a bleak wailing. The sun sets in the west, and the blood-colored sunset gradually falls to the sea level. Lin took a deep breath. This is a level 1 blaster. Even though the enemy is not a regular army, but just some pirates with unruly training, the gap before this is too big. Lin En was in disbelief. He opened his eyes, looked at the horrified old Scholar Hill, and said, "Are there many golden dragons in the pirate lair?" He flipped through the information on the system panel. Current upgrade experience, 30.1/100. His eyes were hot. And the latter didn't seem to hear Lin's question at all, and the old bachelor blushed and said excitedly, "My lord, I swear, for every 10 that group of pirates die, we will only die less than 1. Lin is speechless. Where do you count your feelings? Under the Great Wall of Despair, Castle Black. The illegitimate son of Ned, the former guardian of the North, Jono the Night's Watch, who prevented the White Walkers from killing Elder Bear Gior Mormont, the 997th Commander-in-Chief of the Night's Watch, Commander-in-Chief and Supreme Commander of Castle Black Fortress. Smashed the White Walkers' plot to kill the Commander-in-Chief of the Night's Watch and break into the wall. In order to express his gratitude, Mr. Seong gave him the long-clawed sword that his family had inherited for 500 years. He even thoughtfully replaced the bear head on the hilt with a wolf head. Jono looked at the long-clawed Valyrian blade and was flattered. Gan. The sun has not yet completely set, the beach is golden under the setting sun, and the sea surface polluted by blood is sparkling, as terrifying as the Blood Sea Purgatory. Lin instructed his subordinates to take the residents of the fishing village port to remove the intact armor from the pirate's corpse. Looking at the scattered corpses on the beach, he felt that it should not be a problem to gather the basic defense equipment of the remaining explosives. The OB Knight of White Harbor came to the gate of the fishing village harbor fortress. Maester Hill looked down at the knights under the wall. Those people's armors were silvery, and even their helmets seemed to be carefully groomed, bright and airy. "Lord Lin, do you want to let them in?" The old scholar sobered up from the intoxication of victory and asked for a while. Lin nodded and patted the wall. "We have no choice but to win over and stabilize the people of Baigong, so that we can seize the Three Sisters Islands without any hesitation." "But, sir, haven't you always been reluctant to pay taxes and military service?" "Of course, besides, I was a dozen guards before, and paying military service will make me a bear commander directly." "Sir." The old bachelor misunderstood what Lin meant, thinking that Lin planned to pay military service and taxation this time. If Old Hill's previous proposition was to support the payment of taxes and levies in order to gain the protection of the Eel family in White Harbor, but now, when he sees the Knights of the White Harbor people fighting for life and death in the fishing village port, he is selfish and indifferent. While hiding to the side to watch the battle, the enraged old bachelor completely changed his stance. The peace sect has now become the war sect. Hood, the leader of the guards, also did not give a good look to the people of White Harbor, especially one of the knights who came to White Harbor was an old acquaintance. A knight who looked down on him and always ridiculed his appearance. At this moment, the man was just outside the city gate, riding on a majestic warhorse, looking up with a half-smiling smile. Lin interrupted the old bachelor, "We didn't pay before because we were too weak, and we won't pay now, because I really have no money. Now I am so poor that I don't even have a single copper plate." Lin complained in his heart. But he said to Hood, "You are responsible for dealing with these people. The greatest goodwill that our fishing village port can give is that the seized materials can be distributed to them in lieu of taxation." Lin didn't want to see these knights in person at all. If it wasn't for his own strength, he was not strong enough to support his reckless actions. For these OB players, Lin even ordered the guards on the city wall to shoot a wave of bows and arrows at them. Mature thoughts about yourself for the sake of the bigger picture. Lin felt aggrieved in his heart, and he left the city wall with a flick of his sleeves. His blaster wounded still needed treatment and care. After the war began, when the explosives began to see casualties and attrition, a new option appears in the system. Bomber shop. Lin returned to the mansion, and only then did he have time to open the system menu, find the newly added explosives mall bar, and look carefully. Bombing system mall. Lin looked around and found that the mall contains 3 categories: explosives blacksmith shop, explosives medical center, explosives assembly. The items sold in the blacksmith shop are different from the armors that are exchanged for points. All the items here are buff-type props and weapons. For example, Infantry Admiral Command Knife increases the combat capability of nearby infantry by 10%. Archer Admiral Command Sword increases the shooting accuracy of nearby archers by 10%. Silver Bull Command Horn increases the morale of the entire army by 30%. The effect of the props is outstanding, but the price is also ridiculously high. The cheapest of them is the Commander's Riding Boots, which greatly increases the Commander's movement speed, only for escape and defeat, and the Weapon Sharpening Stone quickly repairs the weapon's rolling blade 10 times, the price both are 50 points. Other prices are more than 200 points. At present, the most expensive Silver Bull Command Horn can be unlocked in the blacksmith shop in the system mall. The price is as high as 6,000 points, and it is one time. Lin looked at the bright red numbers at the top of the mall. Currently available points, 0. The corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. I don't even bother to take a closer look at the things in the bombing medical center and bombing assembling number, and 0 assets are not worth visiting Dobeo. Night is approaching. Lin came to the training ground and walked towards the wooden platform. Rodart and Harry Kane led a wave of people holding torches and followed him up the steps, all dirty and dented in armor, but they couldn't stop laughing. The 2 soldiers behind them stomped a man with a thick beard, and his body was stained with layers of blood. Lin stood on the wooden platform. Below was a row of explosive soldiers lined up. The soldiers then pushed the captured man onto the wooden platform. "The head of the thief," Redarty said loudly. The captive raised his head with difficulty, licked his chapped lips, and said, "Bite Wang Sidi. This is the trial of the winner against the loser, the pirate leader understands." He knelt down honestly. There was a wound on his head, and blood flowed down one cheek from the top of his head. The blood was like pitch black in the firelight of the night. www.mtlnovel.com. "Sir, I am happy to offer the ransom." The corners of Lin's mouth twitched slightly. "Your Excellency, I don't need your ransom. Just tell me where all the treasures you looted are hidden in the Three Sisters Islands." Sidi's face was a little gloomy, and the young lord in front of him was so greedy. "My lord, I'm afraid you won't be able to get a golden dragon on the island." "It's a pity," Lin said coldly. "Kill him? Your lord, the explosives will dig 3 feet into the island for you." Harry Kane tried to ask, "Cut off the offender's head." "No," Lin waved his hand and held the Valyrian knife at his waist. "It's more useful for him to be alive. I'm going to send him to White Harbor, and let the White Harbor ship take him to the Dread Fort. I heard that the Flayers have recently lost their population due to the war." "No, this time it was the pirate king Sidi of Biting Bay who refused." He trembled, lowered his raised head, and gritted his teeth. "Sir, I am willing to offer all the treasures, as long as you just let me go. You're a smart person, so you know you're going to die, but for the sake of your treasure, I'll have someone give you a sea burial," Lin said lightly. The latter's mouth trembled for a moment when he heard this, but he didn't say anything. "Take him away, put him in shackles, and put him in jail," Lin ordered. "Make proper arrangements for the injury. Rodit arranged for your people to rest tonight and set off on a sea boat to the Three Sisters Island early tomorrow. Remember to distribute the collected armor." Lin continued to order slowly. "In addition, be sure to send more people to patrol the night outside the fishing village Port City. As long as the ravens of those people in Baigong fly away from the city, they will all be shot and killed. The news here cannot be spread for the time being." After Rob's alliance with the Freys, when the army left the twins, their strength increased considerably. He sent 2,000 men to feint Tywin Lannister, while he led a sneak attack on Riverrun. The strength of the Kingslayer in Riverrun. There were 12,000 infantry in all, nearly 3 times as many as Rob's army, and they were divided into 3 camps, scattered around the castle, separated by a river. But the proud Kingslayer Jaime Lannister, the Golden Knight who was said to have never known what he was waiting for, still easily fell into an ambush. Robb captured him. However, the people of King's Landing don't know anything about it. Arya, who escaped, was too hungry. He was in the alley of Jun's Landing and planned to trade the pigeons in his arms and the hawker for food, but the hawker told her to leave quickly. At this time, she heard the bad news that his father Ned was taken to Baelor Sanctuary in the name of a betrayer. She climbed up the Baelor statue and saw her father being escorted out in the crowd. Ned was escorted from the hall by 2 guards and walked out. He also saw his daughter. When he passed Uncle Zizi, Yoren the Night's Watch's roaming crow, recruit officer, he called him twice, "Baelor, Baelor." Soon, Uncle Yulan found Arya under the statue of Baelor. At this moment, Sancha was standing beside the Queen Mother Cersei and Emperor Qiao, looking at her embarrassed father Ned, suppressing the urge to cry. And Littlefinger couldn't help but smile complacently. Ned finally chose his family, and under Sancha's suggestion, he admitted his treason. The people shouted that Ned was a traitor and threw stones at him. Ned stabilized himself and said the key point that Emperor Qiao wanted to hear. "I admit that Lord Jolliver Baratheon is the only legitimate heir to the Iron Throne." Emperor Qiao expressed his satisfaction with a smile on his face. At the same time, the verdict was announced: "My mother believes that Ned should be exiled from the Night's Watch, and my fiancée Sansa Stark has also pleaded many times." Sancho looked at Emperor Qiao in relief and smiled. But Emperor Qiao suddenly changed his expression, his eyes full of arrogance, and continued, "However, that's all because of their women's benevolence. The traitor must be severely punished. The executioner, cut off his head for me." Everyone was stunned by this new King Qiao Dadi who played cards out of the way. Arya jumped off the statue and pulled out her sword to save her father. Uncle Zizi appeared in the crowd and held her tightly in his arms, preventing him from seeing Ned beheading. Ned looked at the people who accused him, and turned his attention to the statue. The youngest daughter Arya was gone. He lowered his head. At this moment, he just loves his daughter's father deeply. Glory is not important anymore. He chose relatives. In the end, life and glory were lost. Gan. Early morning in the fishing village harbor fortress. Rodart was instructed to take 100 members of the explosives and Sidi, the pirate king of Biting Bay, and set off to search for treasures on the island of Three Sisters Bay. The departure ships are ready-made, and the slaughtered pirates brought them big ships to go out to sea. Just hire experienced fishermen in the city as sailors. Lin stood on the balcony of the mansion, watching his troops leave the city. He believed in the loyalty of the explosives, and these people would not be greedy for their own golden dragons. So he didn't plan to let any other guards participate in the task of finding the treasure. Looking at the back of the departed, he hoped that the pirate king Sidi had not lied to him, otherwise, what awaited him would not be a sea burial, but the bowel-piercing poison prepared overnight by the old Scholar Hill. After breakfast, he had planned to go to the wounded camp to see the wounded soldiers. In this battle, he lost nearly 45 bombers and added about 60 more casualties, which gave him a great headache. Without money, he can't do much. Even Rodart's rations for going to sea and the money for hiring fishermen as sailors are all owed on credit. Of course, the target of credit is not the system. The bombing system is not so generous, and of course it does not have this value-added service. The old Scholar Hill learned about the difficulties of the Lord and took the initiative to help him. A fisherman and merchant in the city was the old man's little fellow. The old scholar hoped that his little fellow could buy a captured dilapidated pirate at a discounted price. Boat. Lin looked at the pirate ship with 4 broken masts. The paint on the ship had already peeled off, and the original color could not be seen, and agreed. However, there is not much money that a small fisherman and merchant can temporarily lend to the Lord. 20 silver deer just turned around in Lin's hand, and soon it was empty. Lin asked the soldiers of the corps to set up tents with the tattered canvas they had seized in an open space behind the mansion, and temporarily arranged all the members of the explosive corps inside. And for the wounded bombers, they invited cheap women to help them take care of them. Lin felt that women who are good at sewing fishing nets must know how to sew wounds. After the women were in place, there were bursts of howls and howls in the wounded camp. Lin forgot that those women were used to rough hands and feet, and they were better at sewing large and rough objects. Lin stopped for a while at the gate of the wounded camp, and heard the screams of the wounded blasters full of anger. The big stone in his heart fell to the ground, so he didn't go in to disturb him. Back at the mansion, the leader of the guards, Hood, appeared in front of him and said that he hoped that Lin could prepare a sumptuous lunch immediately. Before digesting the breakfast in his stomach, Lin asked, "Are you crazy?" In fact, he felt more distressed about the few meals left in the kitchen. Hood explained, "Sir, as long as it looks rich, we have a lot of sea fish here. As long as every dish is cooked with sea fish, it won't cost a few dollars." Lin asked, "But why did you let this lord entertain those bygone people for no reason?" A flattering smile appeared on Hood's fierce face. The Knights of White Harbor agreed to take only Onet herd of the seizures to offset this year's tax and military service. They will tell the Master Eel that the fishing village port has just experienced a hard battle and needs to recuperate. Only Onet herd? When did these people become so kind? "Sir, we are still giving up half of what we have captured, but these White Harbor Knights intend to take away the rest with 50 silver deer." Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Lin made a simple calculation and scolded these knights for being greedy, but after thinking about it, he didn't seem to have any losses. He handed over half of the expected seizures, saving a trouble, and in the end, it was a good deal. Silver dear. Lin patted Hood on the shoulder heavily, with a satisfied smile on his face. People walked back and forth between the tables, exchanging cups. A dog with eyes smelled the smell of fish and chicken, hid under the long dining table, crossed the large and small legs of the crowd, nibbled the discarded bones from the ground, and enjoyed it happily. Feast. Lin sat on the main seat, watching his guard leader Hood and the Knights of White Harbor have a lively conversation. Every guest's face was red and drunk at this time. He seized the gap between them, toasting each other, and asked, "I don't know where the sailboats in White Harbor can go. I want to see other places in West Eros." The leader of the White Harbor Knights smiled smugly, kicked away the dog beside his feet, and raised his head to look at Lin. "My lord, I want to sell the seized materials. The ship from White Harbor can arrive at Wes. The best captains and sailors of the Seven Kingdoms can be found in White Harbor in any corner of the Tello continent." Lin ignored his superiority, got a satisfactory answer, and raised his glass to toast him. Looking at the Baigong people who lowered their heads and feasted, he smiled with satisfaction. Of course, Lin didn't want to hire the White Harbor ship, he wanted to prepare for his silent explosion on an island far away from the mainland. And building a fleet became a must. Since there are excellent first mates and sailors who are familiar with the coastline of the entire West Eros continent in White Harbor, the most appropriate way is of course not to hire them, but to try to dig those people over. Winter fell. Ned's second son, Bran Stark, dreamed of the Threed Raven again. According to the crow's instructions, his father Ned appeared in the tomb. He wanted to go and have a look, but because his legs were crippled, the manservant Fat Hodder was afraid to go down the hole because he was afraid of the hole. Every Stark who has passed away will store a statue in the tomb for future generations to mourn, and the meaning of Bran's dream can be said to be quite obvious. When they got to the tomb, Bran introduced Osha, who was holding him, one by one. "This is my grandfather who was burned to death by the Mad King. This is my Aunt Lyanna, whom Robert took a fancy to, but was kidnapped by the Mad King's eldest son Rhaegar. Robert also started a war for this. Although Rhaegar was killed, my aunt died in the end." The maid Osha listened silently, holding Bran and continuing to walk inside. Turning a corner, little Bran held up a torch to illuminate the inside. Bran said softly, "There, that's where I saw my father. Of course, Father Ned won't appear again. What appears is a grey dire wolf, which is his brother Rickon's dire wolf, Shaggy. And Rickon had a similar dream." Osha carried Bran back to the castle grounds. She thought the two children were thinking too much. However, when they saw Maester Luwin standing in front of them, Osha had a bad premonition. Sure enough, Maester Luwin quickly confirmed the reality of Brother Bran's dream with a sad expression on his face and the letter in his hand. At this time, Bran and Rickon's wolf spirit qualities have gradually awakened. Just as some members of the Targaryen family have true dragon blood, some members of the Stark family have wolf spirits. Gan. Is this the famous dire wolf? Lin sighed. Look at the options available for purchase in the assembly number column in the Blaster System Mall. The dire wolf, the black bear, and even the little cute pets of the real dragon were stunned. Lin En's eyes were hot for a while, but he didn't have the physique of a wolf spirit and the blood of a real dragon, so he wondered if he could cultivate his own beast from a young age. The leader of the guards, Hood, came over. Lin logs out of the system. He saw that he was squatting down, putting his hand on the head of the little black dog lying on the ground lazily, and fiddling with its hair, just like fiddling with the hair on his head that he hadn't washed for a long time. "It's time for you to wash your hair." Looking at his dirty hair, Lin said uncomfortably. Yes, my lord." Hood was startled, and then replied embarrassedly, "I'll go back after the report." Looking at the appearance of the leader of the guards, Lin En knew that everyone should pay attention to hygiene, so he had to take his time. He turned his face and asked, "Those people from Baigong left with their belongings?" Hood squatted down and patted the little black dog's head lying lazily on the ground, then stood up, and reached out and handed a bag containing a bunch of silver deer. "Let's go, they have to rush to the next town." Lin En nodded, weighed the silver deer purse in his hand, and put it into his arms. Those guys used 50 silver deer to take half of what they seized. Even though the tax was saved, Lin was still somewhat unhappy. The price here is about 1 copper cent for a sausage and a glass of ale, and 56 copper cents for a silver deer. According to the current price, a copper cent is about 5 yuan, a silver deer coin is 280 yuan, and a golden dragon is 210 silver deer, which is equivalent to 58,800 yuan. I remembered that I still have a special occupation drawing card that I haven't used yet. It would be great if you could get a housekeeper to help you manage your finances. The two are talking about something. A servant came over with a plate with 2 glasses of wine on it. Lin sat down on the bench in the mansion and took the glass from the servant. After he took a sip, he said puzzledly to Hood, who was too late to drink it, "Why do you use bad wine at a luncheon? That thing is unpalatable and spicy. The sweetness of this malt wine makes people intoxicated." The leader of the guards, Hood, smiled. "Your Excellency is generous, as long as there is lees, it's not bad. The best ale in Baigong can even be sold for 5 copper cents a cup. So expensive." Lin En's eyes lit up when he heard the words. He felt that he should find a long-term money-making channel for his Krypton gold system. After all, a wild monster as rich as Sidi, the pirate of the Bite Bay, can be encountered but not sought after. Looking at the wine glass, Lin turned to Hood, "Is our mansion ale brewed in-house?" Hood smiled and said, "People in the northern regions love to drink, but they are not good at making wine. Most of the wines in the northern regions are bad wines, which are both bitter and unpleasant to drink." Lin picked up a roasted onion dripping with brown gravy from the dinner plate in the hand of the servant next to him, and bit into it, making a crunchy click. He smiled, with a hint of joy in the corners of his eyes. After Hood thanked Lord Lin for his generous hospitality, he went to patrol the territory for Lin. In addition to the castle, he also took guards to patrol several nearby sandy woodlands. Some refugees in the vicinity always like to cut down the woods in the territory of the fishing village port, and hunt wild animals in the small woods. Hood couldn't stand it. In the territory of the fishing village port, everything should belong to the Lord Lin. For the protection consciousness of the territory, the leader of the guards, Hood, is very competent. Most of the local residents did not feel the presence of the explosive corps and were stationed in the fishing village port. These simple residents just thought that the Lord was invited by the mercenary. As for those who knew a little about the insider, such as the old bachelor Hill and Hood, Lin claimed that he had a relative of a great lord in the kingdom of Dorne at the southernmost tip of the continent. These reinforcements are all hired by him, and in the future, there will be more explosives who will come by sea ships. As for why the so-called relatives of the great lord came to the reinforcements, Lin was deliberately keeping a secret. In this regard, the old scholar Hill thinks that this is the palace that the Lord should have when he matures. www.mtlnovel.com, which just confirms the ambition he sees from Lin En's eyebrows. Hood didn't care about that. He was a typical Westeros knight who knew that it was the truth to do his duty and stay loyal as a subordinate. Rodart took the infantry to the Three Sisters Island to retrieve the treasure of the pirate Sidi, and to explore the island for a suitable place to build a shelter. Before they returned, Lin had limited things to do. Lin walked into the study, closed the door, and told the servants not to disturb him for the time being. "Welcome the host to the blasting system." Lin activates the system. After browsing the various types of monsters in the collection number column of the mall, he turned his attention to the menu of the Bomber Medical Center. The Level 1 blaster system only unlocks one sign in the hospital column. Explosive medics, with surgical scalpels, can treat any wounded soldier, only explosives points required. 5 Lin En smiled wryly. 5 points is the investment of half a golden dragon or 140 silver deer, and he can't afford it for the time being. Then he opened the backpack, and inside there was a golden card holder lying there quietly. First time top-up spree rewards, random selection of cards for special occupations. One of the rangers, travelers, butlers, assassins, and gladiator swordsmen. Lin smiled lightly, except that the traveler seemed useless, everything else looked pretty good. With a 5 in 5 probability of not being able to draw, Lin felt that he still had this character. Click to open. A wonderful prompt sound came from the system. Please wait while the system is being extracted. Congratulations to the host, for obtaining a special occupation, a traveler. A smile instantly froze in the air. Joffrey, the eldest son and heir of King Robert Baratheon and Queen Cersei Lannister, is a mean, arrogant, ruthless, narrow-minded young king. Red Fort. This time, Emperor Qiao asked the executioner to pull out a barred queen who attacked the Queen Mother Cersei in the main hall. To vent dissatisfaction. He was going to take Sancha to visit something. Sancha, who witnessed the execution of his father Ned, cried, his eyes swollen at the moment. He was held by the royal guard and followed behind Emperor Qiao. Coming to the outer edge of the castle, Emperor Qiao excitedly asked Sancha to look at the battlements. When Sansa Stark saw what Joe the Great wanted to show, she couldn't help screaming. What? It was the head of her father, Ned Stark, on the tip of the gun. Sancha lowered her head and didn't dare to look again, but the royal guard firmly held her shoulders, and the collapsed Sancha begged Emperor Qiao to let her return to the north. But Emperor Qiao disagreed, because his mother Cersei asked him to marry Sancha, so she couldn't go anywhere. Sancha, who lost her hope, stopped crying. She raised her head suddenly and asked indifferently, "How long do you want me to watch?" Joffrey is a fool for the 3 idiots whose attitudes have changed so quickly. Somewhat uncomfortable. In order to continue torturing her, he paused and pointed to another head on the tip of the spear, which was the head of the Mordain woman who came down south with the Starks to King's Landing. When I defeat Robb, your brother's head will be hung here to dry. Emperor Qiao said fiercely. Sancha silently stared at the terrifying head and said numbly, "Or my brother will hang your head on it." When Emperor Qiao saw that he was going to rebel, he asked the king's guard next to her to give her a few slaps. After being slapped twice by Ma Da's head, Sansil didn't say a word. She stared at Emperor Qiao's back with hatred. Joffrey was standing on the edge of a covered bridge at this time. Sansil glanced at the height off the ground, and stepped forward to push Emperor Qiao down. The king's guard hound Sandor Clegane hurried over, pulled Sancha back, and covered her up with blood on the corner of her mouth. It is his job to protect the great Emperor Qiao, but human nature prevented him from exposing the 3 fools. Emperor Qiao didn't notice anything unusual, so he turned around and left. The hound left the handkerchief to Sancha so she could do it herself. Sancha looked up indifferently, looked at his father's head, and seemed to have figured out something. Gan. At this moment, Lin En looked at the person who suddenly appeared in front of him, feeling a little melancholy. His features are sharp, thin like a rocky rock, and his grey-blue eyes are always smiling. Like all long-distance travelers, he wore a grey cloak, high leather boots, a wide belt around his waist and silver-plated buckles, and a string of tiny idols around his neck. Traveler, what do you know? Looking at the elite professions he had drawn, Lin really couldn't see anything special. Facing the half-hundred-old man in front of him with no interest, Lin felt that he should wash his hands before drawing the card next time. My duty is to travel, my master. The traveler replied with a smile. Well, the duty is to travel? You are truly talented. Why don't you fly? Lin En suppressed his emotions, took a breath, walked in front of him, and forced a smile. You are already so old, it will be very dangerous if you take risks to travel again. If you can manage things, you can stay in the castle and be a housekeeper. Lin makes a last-ditch effort. The old traveler raised his head, looked at Lin blankly, and stubbornly corrected, "Master, I am a traveler, this is my mission, if I lose my mission, I will die soon, do you want to see me like this?" Lin En was blocked by these words and choked on the spot. After a long while, he blinked and said, "Where are you going to travel? It will cost a lot of money, right?" After that, he added, "Recently, your master, I just faced bankruptcy." The traveler waved his hand hurriedly and explained in an old, hoarse voice, "No, master, the traveler doesn't need much entanglement. Just prepare a horse for me. I will wander around, and then I will find a way to survive on my own." Lin could see that the old man really liked traveling. As long as he agreed to continue to be a traveler, his gloomy eyes immediately revived. Lin could only accept this result, and finally he asked, "Then, Your Excellency traveler, I will sponsor you a horse, but when you come back from your trip, will it bring me anything?" Hearing this, the old man said proudly, "You can just call me Ali Baba. When I come back, I will bring you a big bag. Gold. A load of stories, master." Ali Baba took one of the few horses in the stable. Lin watched the old man leave happily. "I just feel bitterness at the corners of my mouth. Look at what job I've been drawn to, what's the story? Hell!" Without a suitable housekeeper, Lin planned to take care of these trivial matters first. He asked the old bachelor to write the handwriting he was going to recruit on a piece of paper, and then asked his attendants to post it on the bulletin board at the gate of the castle. For sailors, males are required to be 20 to 40 years old, with strong physical strength. The monthly payment is 8 silver deer. Blacksmith, gender is not limited, over 18 years old, has casting experience, and is paid 8 copper and silver deer per month. Handyman, male, over 18 years old, 6 silver deer per month. Masons are not limited by gender or age. Those who have participated in the construction of the fort are preferred, and the monthly reward is 8 silver deer. Supplementary terms, excellent swordsmen and those with experience in housekeeping can also apply. The suitable lord can grant the status of a servant or the title of housekeeper, and the remuneration is negotiable. After the notice was read, the crowd was already noisy. www.mtlnovel.com. A dark-skinned and thin middle-aged fisherman said in surprise, "The monthly salary of 8 silver deer is comparable to the salary of 2 months of hard work at sea." Someone immediately slapped him in the face, "But do you know how to build walls? Or experience building fortresses? I'm afraid it's not easy to build a cesspool. If you have anything to do with you, even being a handyman is not bad. My mother-in-law recently repaired the wounds of the mercenaries who fought the day before yesterday at the Lord's mansion. It's very simple, and she earns 20 copper cents a day." A young and strong man said in surprise, "I have hunted at sea and killed a seal that jumped on the boat with a sword. Is it considered an excellent swordsman?" Bum! It's majestic to be a servant, but you can only withstand a few times in the sea. You can't even ride a horse, so how can you be a servant? Dani Tully, a girl with a layer of mud on her face, squeezed in front of the crowd, not paying attention to the jobs the others were talking about. All her attention was on the supplementary clause at the end of the notice. "The Lord here seems to be lacking a steward." Dani Tully recalled living in Riverrun when she was a child. As Ed Muir Tully's illegitimate daughter, she was taken care of by a maid since she was a child. She knew what a servant's work and life were like. Moreover, she can write well, and she feels that she can apply for the job, even if she gives it a try. Since the Lannister army swept the Riverlands and Riverrun was surrounded by Jaime Lannister's people, she had nowhere to go. She had to be led all the way to the maid's home by the maid who had taken care of her since childhood. Fishing Village Port. Dani Tully withdrew from the crowd at the announcement. She ran back excitedly. She was going to tell Hilly that she was going to find a decent job.